Well, welcome back. Today I'm going to start reassembling the bumper and other parts and pieces that I've taken off the car as I rebuilt this. Before I did that, I wanted to kind of just run through the part inventory, all the things I had to purchase to make this twin turbo configuration. Starting at the intake, the existing throttle body, 3.5 to 3 reducer, 3-inch aluminum universal tube kit. These are from eBay. They come with clamps and different variety of angle bends and straight runs. This center here is the existing mass airflow sensor. This is a Spectre, I guess, a replacement kit. It comes with a 3-inch tube, and also it comes with some throats to change the diameter, but this 3-inch tube matches what's originally in this car. As we continue down away from the intake, this is a Rev 9 intercooler. I actually kind of like this unit. It was quite robust. I made some brackets out of old bed hanger, I guess, but you do what you got to do to put it in place. I do recommend Loctiting the fasteners that hold the intercooler in place. I mean, the primary support for this is these upper two brackets. I have some straps underneath just to keep it from rocking back and forth. I drilled and tapped a 3/8 MPT port on both sides of the intercooler body so I could put my temperature sensors in from glow shift. Maybe I'll show those quick. So I mounted the glow shift sensors here kind of temporarily until I think of a better way to do this. But, they're pretty neat. I think they worked pretty well, and it wasn't too bad getting them all wired up and the pressure lines in place. It worked out well that up in the center console there's the traction control button has the dimming capabilities from when the lights are on, and it's also on when the key is on, so to tee in for the light function on these gauges is pretty easy, and then power just comes from the center console, the cigarette lighter. Nice. More on the front of the car. Here's my intake side. I just bought some K&N cylinder filters. I think they're about 3-inch diameter, maybe 3.5 by roughly 8 inches long. These connect to the turbo intakes. It's a 2.5-inch universal kit. I bought 2 of those from eBay. If they excuse all the water, it rained like 4.5 inches in about an hour and a half yesterday. I've never had water come in through the walls underneath the garage before, but it happened. Underneath, this is the pressure side from the turbos. This is more the 3-inch kit that I used on the other side going up to the throttle body. This is a Y adapter. I think that was a special buy from Cool Flow, or I have to find a name for those guys and maybe put it in the comments. But I couldn't find anything like this on eBay. Maybe it's there, maybe not. But I did find one, and it actually worked out pretty well. From there, it reduces down to some 2-inch runs, and these go to both turbos. Key's still on, so you probably maybe just barely hear the Spartan pump running. This is the, I used to have the eBay A-Marine pump in here, and it was quite a bit louder than this. The body in this is a little bit bigger than the other pump, so it kind of interfered with the tubing runs I had laid out for it. But plumbing wise, for the oil flow, there's on the drain line, this is from the pump to the oil pan. This is just 3/8 MPT fittings, heater hose, clamps, pretty basic, and barb fittings. Maybe I'll set this down back here a little ways. So for the pressure side, this is all the trouble I had. Pressure lines going to the turbos are, there's a 10 millimeter port in the turbos. I have an adapter that goes from 10 millimeters to AN4. Those have a 60 thousandths orifice in them. It wasn't enough of an orifice to keep the oil from going into the turbo too fast relative to how fast I was taking it out. Well, even when I had it just draining into a bucket, it was still too much. But for the pressure line, it comes to a T, and in that T I have a 40 thousandths orifice, and that also has a filter in the same body. And ahead of that, there's a Jegs 5 psi check valve. This keeps the oil from draining out from the oil filter into the turbos while the unit's sitting still. This took several weeks to get the parts and configure it. Just if I knew what to do up front, it would have been a lot faster. But having said that, the turbos themselves are, the Chinese knockoffs of the GT 2252 Garrett turbos. It's the right size for its application. If it's running in its, if your target is between 360, 400 horsepower, it puts it right in the center of its highest efficiency band for operation. So when that's pushing 10 psi. For this application, I'll probably run it a little bit less of a boost, maybe 5 to 7, just for now, to avoid having to do too much work with the injectors or fuel pump and possibly internals on the engine. The exhaust piping is just a combination of exhaust piping, adapters, flanges, all sorts of things from an auto parts store, and then I reused the existing flanges from the catalytic converters, just cut them off and re-welded them upstream. You really can't see up in there, and it's quite dark on here now. All we have is a light from outside coming in. To reinstall the oxygen sensors, I bought these stepped bungs from eBay. It has actually kind of a nice unit that 18 millimeter tapped hole through the center. It's basically a weld ring, and then there's a step down in the bung to a smaller diameter that actually fits into the tube, and that makes it quite a bit easier to weld in place versus just having a straight cylinder that you have to kind of float in there and weld, and have to deal with burn through and all that kind of stuff. Believe it or not, when I would do my test runs with this configuration, I didn't get any, codes in the computer telling me that I had an error with the oxygen sensors or anything like that. So it was fairly impressive that way. I'm going to try and sneak over to the passenger side. Maybe it's a little easier to see some things. Right now on these wastegate actuators, I have a couple of compression springs from the master car. And the idea here is that when I have the actuators set to their minimum opening force, that means extending the rod out as basically as far as it can go without running down a thread. My tests on the bench showed that it would take 10-12 psi of air pressure to open them up, but that didn't have any assist from the exhaust pressure. So if you think about the turbo wastegate, there's back pressure between the turbo and the exhaust ports on the engine that helps to open that wastegate, and so I'm not sure how much that actually assists, but in this kind of environment for testing, there's really no way to bring this thing up to full boost and see when the wastegate opens without running the risk of damaging the engine and that sort of thing. So kind of have to creep up RPM wise, just do a little bit of testing, and if you think that your boost level is getting too high, my thought is that these compression springs can be compressed a little bit to try and help open these wastegates earlier. There'll be some down the road testing. Get out of the way here. Underneath, all the tubing sits relatively tight to the cross member underneath the engine. If you think about this as the bottommost plane of the car, maybe where my hands are, it's about, I don't want to flip you off, but there's about 2 knuckles worth of distance down below the bottom plane of the car with the turbo piping. So yeah, you run the risk of scraping this on the ground, but with this configuration, there's not a whole lot more that can be done. Everything underneath this car is just tight. Everything on top of this car is tight, and everything to the left and right is tight. I even kept the oil plug open so you can actually still get to it. Well, get some things right without trying. So that concludes the inventory that I have so far. One last thing I need to buy is wideband air fuel gauge and sensor, so that's coming, and I'm going to try and get it mounted into the exhaust pipe somewhere. I don't know, it's probably best if it was on the front side of the turbo, but I don't think it'll make much difference if I mount it, or actually maybe even use one of the bungs temporarily just to see how it works in the after turbo position. There you go.